In this video, we're going to go through one of the substitution problems from your menu style practice. So this problem is part of the appetizers. It's the bottom middle of the first page. So the very bottom row, the middle problem. So for substitution, this concept requires us to take one equation and plug it into another equation to be able to find the solution. So the first thing that I want to note is that I'm looking for a coordinate point. So my answer for a system, so if it says to solve this, my answer should be x comma y. And that's what I'm looking for. And I kind of want to keep that in my mind as I go through this. So if it helps you, maybe write this up at top to kind of remind you. So the first step of substitution is to find one equation or mix up the equation so that you have a variable by itself, either x or y. So if I'm looking at these two equations, I have my first equation says y equals this stuff. It's a little bit backwards, but y is still completely by itself. There's nothing on that side of the equation. So this is a really good problem for substitution. So what we're going to do is this first equation is basically saying 3x minus 2. So I'm going to kind of color code this as I go, and you can do the same. But 3x minus 2 is the exact same thing as y. They're the same thing. So wherever a y goes, this can also go because they are the same exact thing. That's what equals means. So that's going to help us to find our solution to our system because we have another equation. So if I know that y is equal to all this stuff, then I also know that that happens down here as well. So if I want to use substitution, I can take this stuff, the stuff I have in a box, and I can place it where y is in this second equation. So here's y, and I like to draw myself a little arrow so I know which direction it's going, but I can take all this stuff and I can plug it in for y, which will help me solve. So if I do that, everything else stays the same. So I'm going to use, this equation is going to be green for me. So I have a 2. Then immediately I see the y, and so instead of y will no longer be there. I'm going to put the stuff that y is equal to. So y is equal to 3x minus 2. Then I have to keep going with the green equation. So now the y is done, so that box part is done. And then I still have minus 6x equals negative 4. So I think this part is the hardest part. So I want to review one more time what I did. So I first look for either x equals or y equals. Then I take everything after the equal sign, or in this case before the equal sign, and I plug that in for the right variable. So if it's equal to y, which is what ours was, I plug it in for y. If this would have been equal to x, I would have needed to plug it in for x. What that means to plug something in is that instead of y, so I take y out of this equation, and in its place I put this new stuff. Okay, so now we are just simplifying, and you guys are really good at this from last unit. So I see parentheses, so we want to distribute first. So 2 times 3 gives me 6x. 2 times negative 2 gives me minus 4. Then I get minus 6x equals negative 4. So now I want to start simplifying, and I notice that on this side of the equation, I have some like terms. So I have 6x and negative 6x, so I want to combine them. Well, 6x minus 6x gives me 0x, so those just cancel out. And I'm left with negative 4 equals negative 4. So this is one of those weird solutions. So my x's went away, those are gone, and I'm left with negative 4 equals negative 4. Well, I need to ask myself when this happens, is this statement true or is it not true? In this case, negative 4 does equal negative 4. So if it is true, that means we have infinite solutions. So that means these lines cross all the time. And what that looks like is that they are the exact same line. This and no solution won't really fit our model, so as I said, we are looking for a coordinate point. This just means that it crosses at every coordinate point. So let's do another one from your practice that won't have infinite solutions. Okay, so this next problem is on the back of your worksheet. It's in a dessert section, and it is the middle problem. So let's solve this by substitution, and then you will also have to graph it and make sure you get the same thing. But we're first looking for something that says x equals or y equals. So in this case, we have y equals on the very top, and I want to put a box around everything that follows. This is the stuff that y is equal to. So since this is equal to y, I can plug it in for y in the other equation since they're equivalent. And so I'm going to rewrite the second equation, but I am going to replace y with the stuff that it's equal to. So x plus, and then if there's not a number out front, so there's not a coefficient here, I can just write this without parentheses. If you want to add the parentheses, you can, but there will be nothing to end up multiplying. So I have negative 2x minus 5. And then I still have that equals negative 5 from my purple equation. So this y became this negative 2x minus 5 part. So now I want to simplify. And so I want to combine my like terms first. So I see that we have an x and a minus 2x. So x minus 2x gives me negative 1x. Everything else stays the same. Then I want to get this 5 over to the other side. So I'm going to add 5 to both sides. And I get negative 1x equals 0. Don't be alarmed by that. 0 is still a number, and we still have our variable over here, so we don't have a situation like the infinite solution problem. So I still would just divide by negative 1. Well, 0 divided by anything is just 0, so x equals 0. So now I want to put a little cloud around this because that's half of my answer. So now I know that my answer for this problem is going to be 0 comma something. And I need to figure out what that something is. So once you have part of your answer, you can take that as given information and plug it in to either one of your original equations. I choose whatever I think is easiest. When we have something to plug in like 0, it ends up being pretty easy as it is. But I'm going to plug it into the top one because I think it'll be a little bit easier. So for the top one, we're going to have y equals negative 2. And then there's the x, so I'm going to plug that in, and our x is 0. Then I have minus 5. Well, anything times 0 is 0, so y equals negative 5. And put a little cloud around that one because that is the second part of our equation, or our coordinate point. So what this means is that these lines should cross at 0, negative 5. So when you graph that, it should cross at this point as well. I hope this helped clarify some maybe misconceptions or some things that we needed help understanding for substitution.